Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Build Time. Today we are going to be discussing what is a headless CMS. I've got Stefan here. Hey Stefan, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Tony. How about you?
Doing good. All right, you ready to get into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. So if you're not familiar with headless CMS, we actually just redesigned this landing page for everyone to check out. Headless CMS explained in a few minutes. I'll make sure to have this link in the show notes for everyone to check out. Basically, what we've done here is just set up kind of a primer for everyone to kind of review and see the high level viewpoints of what a headless CMS is, kind of where CMS, content management system, has been, where it's going, and kind of intro to Cosmic and our approach to headless CMS. So to kind of get started here, let's talk about what is a headless CMS. So we've created this diagram to discuss, okay, what is a headless CMS and how is it built? So generally with a content management system, you have a database, you have an ability to create content in a dashboard, and you have user management with different roles and permissions to manage that content. With a headless CMS, what you have is you have all of that kind of combined into one system with an API. And the benefit of this is that you can actually send your content to any number of front-end heads, right? So you can actually power content for a website, for a mobile application, emerging tech like AR, VR, voice assistants. And so that's kind of the benefit that you get with a headless content management system is it's sort of front-end agnostic, right? Now with a traditional CMS, what we are what we've seen in the space for, I guess, since like the early 2000s when WordPress and Drupal and all of these other installed CMS systems emerged, is that they provided for you this open source code base that you can install and run on a server, and it had a connected front end. So this was kind of the way that a lot of blogs and kind of simple websites were built using kind of this installed application that you run on a server, and then you have to maintain it over time. So you can kind of see the difference here, right? Traditional CMS has the website attached to it with an opinionated language such as PHP in the case of WordPress and Drupal.
Yeah.
Headless CMS actually removes the front end and enables you to push that content wherever the content needs to go. So that's kind of the difference there. And going back to this landing page here, we've got a bit of a visual to show you like what that data looks like. So you have kind of this JSON object that can power a simple website front end. So this is kind of bring your own front end, but this is sort of what is provided for you as far as a data set, right? So what does headless mean? This is actually probably a common question because it just sounds so bizarre, right? What a headless CMS, we're used to content management systems, and then headless sounds like pretty grotesque, but it's actually pretty common in software development. A headless software is basically a software that comes without a graphical user interface, a front end portion of the application. It just provides for you the back end software, whereas you can consider the head being any kind of opinionated front end. Now, without that head, you actually get a lot more flexibility in configuration or delivery of that sort of back end data structure. So it's sort of a common term with software, and now it's being used to describe a content management system. So I think an interesting thing to look at is sort of the history of monolithic CMSs. So Stefan, I know that you've got some experience with this. Let's kind of take this on like a personal journey level here. So what are some of the experiences you've had with monolithic CMS systems, and now that you're using Cosmic and headless CMS, what do you think the main differences are, and what's been your experience going from the monolithic to the new headless type of CMS?
Yeah, so I mean, in one word, WordPress. It's just a lot of WordPress. I mean, I come from a lot of WordPress development, and it's just the idea that all of your code is in one place, and for the right person, WordPress, it works. But what I always ran into is when I wanted to do something fairly custom, or even just any kind of stylistic things or front end things, it's just it's a pain to do it in WordPress when you don't have your whole front end code written out. And I mean, of course, you go in, you go in and edit some PHP and whatnot. But it's so opinionated and it's limiting. It's very limiting. Whereas kind of moving into the headless CMS space, instantly you can essentially just bring, you can build a front end with React or Vue or Astra or literally whatever you want. And because you can access your content via an API, it just makes it so flexible for your use case. And I mean, for the most part, once you get that front end built out, then if you're at a place where you're happy with it, you can just design your API and your content management system, and it's the sky's the limit from there. But I know you've gone through a lot of pain points with WordPress yourself, but before this show, we were kind of talking on the note of WordPress is still it's a really large percentage of all the websites on the web are WordPress sites, so there's no doubt that it's deeply embedded with things, but
Yeah. I think the last numbers I remember hearing was like 30% of the web is powered by WordPress. So this is still an emerging strategy, right? To decouple your content from your code. What you were mentioning as far as like you could build your front end in any number of different languages or application languages. We have front end frameworks like React and Next.js, Node.js. We've got this one that you just built on Astro, right? So the limitations with WordPress, this one's built on Vue, is that you kind of have to learn PHP, right? If you wanted to like make it configurable and update the front end. So you had to learn PHP, you had to learn MySQL database, you had to learn Apache and kind of server side hosting, all that stuff. With a headless CMS, really, you are able to just kind of build your application using the tools that you want, right? So I think this is a great example, this Cosmic app template page, where you can see all the various ways you could build out a front end, right? A lot of Next.js examples here that we've been working through. We also have Vue. We've got even Svelte. So a lot of different options here for you to check out. And I think that's a pretty crucial one for developers, is that headless CMS provides you that flexibility to build your application how you want it and deliver that content wherever it needs to go. So I think this is a cool place to check out like all the different use cases. So we've got, notice on the side here, you got like use cases, as well as like built with. You can kind of filter this down to see different approaches to building headless CMS applications.
So you even got PHP examples there, huh? An homage to the WordPress. PHP, that's the elephant one, right?
No hate on PHP, because it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's like jQuery. It's sort of the gateway. Like it's a really easy onboard as a server-side language to get you to build some cool stuff and really flex some developer muscles at the start to think, wow, I'm such a great engineer. jQuery was the same thing on the front end for me. So I think it's a great way to get familiarized with building applications. And I started on WordPress, and I built out a ton of WordPress websites back in the day. And some of the limitations that I found was not just on the front end of building the websites, but also kind of on the installation, configuration, and maintenance, and all that stuff that I had to do as a developer to like maintain this instance of the CMS. So with hosted CMSs, right, with a hosted headless CMS, you don't have that problem anymore, right? You've basically eliminated all the technologies that you don't have to build or you don't have to maintain, and you've kind of opened up your time as a developer. So now that if you use like something like Cosmic for your hosted CMS, then all you have to worry about is like, putting together your content models in the dashboard and then delivering it via an API, right? And then you can build your front end how you want it. So moving on from kind of that high level of where monolithic CMSs were, kind of how they're still pretty dominant in the marketplace. Now we're talking about like, what's so great about using an API? So I think this is kind of an important point here, because as engineers, I think we sort of assume some of these terms are understood, right? But an API, it's really kind of a revolutionary development here in new modern website and application development, right? An API has enabled quite a bit of power and flexibility on the front end. So let's kind of take a step back and talk about what is an application programming interface, right? An API is kind of the way that like you have all of these different systems communicate with each other, right? So like Cosmic, our headless CMS provides an API, either REST API or GraphQL, and that enables you to kind of just consume that data wherever it needs to go. And so, some approaches in the past to APIs were SOAP, as well as if you're familiar with like RSS. RSS is still kind of being used for like podcast syndication, right? But it's really kind of satisfying the same goal of how do we enable consumption of this data from various clients, right? So if you want your website content to be available in your mobile application, and you want the same content available in your intranet in a dashboard app, or maybe if you're creating like some interactive applications on IoT, like watches or voice assistants, right? So really APIs enable you to just syndicate or deliver that content wherever it needs to go. And so that's kind of the power of the headless CMS. And I think that's one of the most important distinctions here between the traditional CMS that comes without an API built in, and a headless CMS that really is kind of API first. So that is something I think as a developer, that's sort of why I think as React engineers, Next.js or Vue, like we're used to using APIs and we're used to using like data payloads to render front-end content. And I think that's sort of now with modern development, modern JavaScript frameworks, like that's the ideal approach in my opinion. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think API first gives you a good idea of how to maybe even design some of your code architecture, and it's very flexible as far as you could use a single content management system to power so many things, but APIs, they're amazing, and they allow so many different technologies to talk to each other. And I think especially these days, there's so many libraries that are built on APIs that make it really easy for developers to integrate microservices into their applications. So
Yeah, definitely. I think like what we've seen in the past decade or so is this emergence of microservices and the way that you get them to communicate with each other. For example, Stripe and Twilio, Zapier and all these other kind of integration points in your development stack. Those are all made possible by exposed APIs, right? And so those are the tools that developers really need to build these modern applications. So here's kind of, I think the kicker here is a headless CMS frees content to be deployed to any website or app, and that's made possible by this layer right here, the API layer. So here's an interesting thought experiment is, well, what about a WordPress installation that ships with an API, right? Because that's kind of what's going on right now is like these monolithic solutions are realizing that developers want exposed APIs. So what would that be called? Well, actually, that's kind of more of a decoupled CMS, right? Meaning that it ships, the code base ships with a front end. It has all of the kind of backend database and file management and user management on that dashboard code base, and comes with that coupled front end website. But then it also has another layer. It has the API layer that it exposes, so that if you do want to build, a React app or Vue or whatever application that just consumes the API data, that's available as well, right? So they've just sort of, instead of going completely headless, they've said, okay, we'll just kind of provide an API so that you can, do that as well.
So it's like opinionated. So it's like an opinionated content management system where you can still bring your own front end.
Right. So you can bring your
Got
own
it.
front end. You have that option to use like the PHP based front end.
Sure.
But then you also have this like additional, we don't have this diagram, but basically what that would look like is just like if you attach like an API onto the side of this like traditional CMS coupled diagram, right?
Got it. So, but with that, with the decoupled system or decoupled CMS, it's like you can't, is it a predefined like design, like the API, the way it's designed and I'm assuming their dashboard. I've actually never used a decoupled CMS, but the dashboard itself is kind of like a WordPress dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where it's
Yeah,
all predefined.
exactly. Yeah. So
Interesting,
I know that
interesting.
there's an extension on, or rather they call them plugins, plugin in WordPress that enables you to have a GraphQL API.
Yeah,
Pretty sure that it's all plugin driven. I'm not sure if it's out of the box API uh, with
it's
a new WordPress installation. Um,
it's WordPress GraphQL. That's the one
WordPress
that
GraphQL.
yeah, and essentially you just get a GraphQL. You get to query all your WordPress stuff with GraphQL, but it
Yeah,
literally
have you
just
used
it's
it
just
before?
I have used it before. Yeah, it's literally just WordPress. And yeah, you're right. It's just a plugin, and you basically just get to access all your WordPress content. So, well, I guess that's convenient. You still kind of have the limitation of if you want to use, like a headless CMS, you get the full flexibility of defining all your own objects in your content model. But with the WordPress GraphQL plugin, you essentially, I mean, you're stuck with exactly how WordPress is set up. But
Right, exactly. So I think you're kind of touching on like the drawbacks of a traditional CMS is you definitely have a lot of, I think the number one thing for me is like the developer experience. You still have quite a bit of technology to maintain, right? You have all of that kind of back-end infrastructure. You also have I'm not sure if you've ever experienced this before, but the possibility of clients installing extensions that blow up the website.
oh, been there.
That's
I've
a
been there. I've
common
been,
occurrence
yeah,
where
it's the
you,
worst.
yeah, I've definitely had late night calls where panicked clients are wanting to revert from some sort of extension
Yeah,
grenade they threw into their website. So that's
yep.
that's problematic. There's also, I think there's some aspects of WordPress that I think are very unintuitive as well, right? As far as like the general content creator experience, even though I think that WordPress probably does the best of the monolithic CMS systems, it's still fairly difficult to use unless the developer has done a lot to sort of mitigate any sort of complexity that it ships with.
On that, yeah, on that note, especially the unintuitiveness, it makes me think of using like third-party theme builders like Elementor or Thrive or whatnot, like some of the big ones. You're essentially relying on their ability to talk to WordPress, and sometimes there's bugs in there, and it's not very intuitive. Like you'll go in and oh, you want to edit this page. Oh, you're editing this page, but oh wait, no, don't edit it with the native WordPress block builder. You got to go into the Elementor one and
Mhm.
kind of define some things. But I ran into it was the other month. It was integrating a microservice as a WordPress plugin and did something on it. It was working on the front and everything, but when I would try to go into the page builder, just infinite loading screen, couldn't get into the theme builder. And those are the kind of things you would constantly run into with WordPress. And I mean, what you want to disable the plugin on production, like you have no choice. But I guess the saving grace of some of those services like SiteGround. I have a few WordPress projects deployed on SiteGround, and um, essentially I had a client who did change some setting and took production down. They crashed their entire database, but I guess a convenient thing there is just going in and simply restoring the database from a backup the day before is super convenient. So
Oh,
you
wow.
do get some with those opinionated things, you get some really fortunate things where if your client crashes the entire site, then you can just go back and boop, yeah, it's restored yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you know
but
what's an even better option than that is not having the front end. It's like
yeah, yeah,
instead just focusing on,
yeah,
decoupling the front end and the back end, and using a service, I think, for and like what you mentioned, peace of mind, having backups. Cosmic offers automatic backups. So you're always, a click away from like restoring from a prior backup in case you do, nuke your content model, or if, an editor goes rogue, or whatever sort of happens,
yeah,
your
yeah.
content that you need to roll back. So, I think those peace of mind issues have been sort of, uh, uh, built into the, most professional, production ready CMS, headless CMS system. So we definitely have built that into our solution.
I
Um,
got an interesting idea on that. The difference, think of the difference between the like development or uh like the development style between monolithic and headless, like between having these maybe like a headless CMS deployed on something like Vercel where you're continuously like developing and integrating and everything, as opposed to something like WordPress where a content is simply just selecting different things and um updating content or visually or whatever. But what's the kind of think of the difference between how it would be a lot harder to crash your application with something like with a headless CMS, to where unless you made major breaking changes in the code on production, then you have a lot more steps between getting there, as opposed to installing a faulty plugin on WordPress and boom, your whole thing's down because it's all stuck together.
Yeah, I think, what comes to mind with what you just mentioned is, the new workflows that are being implemented, such as like, Vercel's preview focus, where, anytime you ship something, you get a preview of it first before you actually deploy it to production. And I think that is kind of where headless CMS is moving, as well as like providing that experience, that peace of mind of knowing that you can always, preview your content updates, and when it's ready, then you can merge it into production. That's something that Cosmic offers, right? To have that peace of mind of preview before merging to production. We've got something called merge requests, and that establishes workflow approvals, so that if your editor wants to update multiple pieces of content in their project, they can issue a request to merge it into the production bucket, and that can be, as simple as like previewing and making sure that nothing has been broken, and then merging it in, right? So
Yeah,
and to your point, like, there's not a lot of other vulnerabilities as far as like plugins that could also affect the production build. But you're right, like in a WordPress environment, like it's kind of in production, right? If you mess with the settings, or you mess with the any of the content or the plugins, like all of that is vulnerable to taking the site down, uh, because it doesn't have that workflow. It doesn't have like the actual like separation of data between like,
yeah,
production, staging, and development, where you can perform like some of these like data approvals, right? So
yeah,
that's a big part of it, and that's a really good point.
yeah.
Okay, so with that, like, what are the benefits of a headless CMS? So we talked about, developers have less infrastructure to maintain. They really just build their content models in Cosmic, or, any other headless CMS, and then deliver it to their front end. And that's kind of where that's where they have their ownership of the code base, right? They don't have to maintain the CMS code base, because that's already provided for them with Cosmic, and now they just focus on their application logic. So another thing I think that's really important, especially because the point of a content management system is a high level of collaboration, is that headless CMS really gives the developers and content creators on a team exactly what they need and really nothing more, right? So the developers, they don't have to maintain the CMS infrastructure. All they do is focus on their content modeling and their application logic. And then the content creator gets a really intuitive and easy to use dashboard, right? So I think that's something that we stress, is that it's very much a collaborative solution. So, we'll kind of get to this in the next section, but I think that's where this approach really makes for a compelling use case, is when you have a team of developers and content creators. We touched on this before: content scalability, right? Once you deliver it anywhere. Enhanced security, I think, is a big one. I remember with WordPress, when I built out all these WordPress websites, the spam bots were relentless. So like comments, just constantly commenting and getting, like, trying to log in, and like, so it's almost like a honeypot when you use WordPress. Like the spam bots like know it's WordPress, and they just they just attack it. And so I think that's kind of one of the downsides of the the open source CMS, is that now you've exposed your solution to, like, kind of open source vulnerabilities, where it's kind of known that you can attack this one page with this certain data set, and then you'll get into somebody's commenting database. Or I remember actually I don't think it was a client, it was actually one of the team members on in my old agency. They had a website that was fairly popular. It was like a design website, and the comments were just blowing up as far as like the spam comments in the database. And then one day he mentioned that he had a bill like in the thousands of dollars for like data bandwidth, because of the fact that
Wow,
these spam bots were just like attacking his database,
that's
and were
crazy.
creating all of this like bandwidth kind of charges by usage. So like,
Yeah.
that's it's like the security of your system, and it's also like the cost of your system. It's I think it's a big consideration. And when you do have a WordPress solution, I think it may be even more vulnerable.
And it's unintuitive, because then you have these spam bots by default. From my experience, just about every new WordPress site you ship, you'll get like that initial, in the first day or two, that initial spam, or a couple of spam comments, if you have something like comments enabled, if it's a blog or something like that. But it's unintuitive, because then you have to go and download a plugin to block out the spam. And it's like, that's kind of the mindset, is, oh, hey, just, this is kind of like the way WordPress is. So download this plugin, and now you have 5 new plugins that you have to maintain and update. And it's just like, it's clutter. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
I'm not
yeah.
going to infer anything on this comment, but how convenient is it that, the like one of the best selling plugins is like the bot defender plugin.
Yeah.
So there's a market for, not only the vulnerability, but the solution. So
Yeah.
there's no market for the cure, but there's a market for the medicine, right?
Yeah.
But I think the cure is headless CMS. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There you go.
okay, so and then with that, optimizations come out of the box with Cosmic. Not only are you using like our intuitive dashboard, you're also getting the optimized global infrastructure, our global CDN, which is backed by the best cloud service providers: AWS CloudFront, Fastly, global caching. So within milliseconds, your customers are going to receive that that content from your company. So globally fast, optimized, without any sort of development efforts on your team's part. So really just kind of turnkey, like the best content management system, most optimized that you could possibly want, right? So that's kind of the goal here, is to provide that service that really kind of has optimized for everything, so you don't have to worry about scaling, you don't have to worry about globally fast for all of your customers around the world. We've already covered that for you. Any thoughts on that? That was a bit of a sales pitch, but that's
Yeah. No, I
kind of
mean,
what Cosmic offers, right? Is that just kind
yeah.
of turnkey optimization. And
And
with any other monolithic CMS that you maintain yourself, like, you'll have to do all those optimizations on your own.
Yeah,
So
no.
I think
Yep.
that's a really good consideration for like build versus buy. Is the cost benefit analysis worth it? Because you could definitely use like, Fastly with like a WordPress installation. You can have your own caching layer, and I think you do even have a caching layer with WordPress. Even though it still hits a server, it still hits the database. You can have a sort of a caching optimization, but then again, you'll have to sort of like optimize on all of those fronts, right? And that's still something you'd have to
And that goes back to the exact same thing. It's unintuitive, and you're having to, maintain that plugin or maintain and go through and optimize all those things. Whereas, yeah, I don't have much to say about it because it's wonderful. The out of the box benefits of Cosmic or of a headless CMS service is, you do get a CDN, and simply even right there, it's like, well, I can't complain. Even the free version of Cosmic, you get that capability. You get all those capabilities, most of those capabilities, and it's like, how can you play with that? So
Right. Yeah. Image optimization is also a big one. I remember in
yeah.
WordPress having to like resize or like set some sort of configuration to have
Oh,
like different sizes for like mobile, desktop, and tablet, and whatever sort of, variations you want in between. And it was, a lot of manual work, right? But then with
yeah.
Cosmic, what we've done, we just said, you know what? We're partnering with like this image provider. So Imagix is our is our image optimization service that we use. So all you have to do is sort of upload your media to Cosmic, and then out of the box you have immediate Imagix optimization. So you don't have to. You can just resize all of those images on the fly. You don't really need to do any sort of manual work on your end besides setting maybe just or even some of the examples that we've used, which is like Next.js image, or even the Imagix React component, where it kind of does all of the resizing for you. All you have to do is provide that Cosmic Imagix URL, and then it does it all
Absolutely
automatically.
love Imagix, and it's just so convenient. I mean, since I started using Cosmic, um, I was kind of like ignorant to the fact that Imagix was already there by default. It felt so intuitive that it was already there. But once we had Tom from Imagix on, and he's just a G. He's a Imagix wizard, of course. But it just got me thinking all the things you can do. So right there, if you guys go check out Imagix and see all the wonderful things you can do with your images, it's the capabilities are endless because you have it out of the box with Cosmic. So yeah.
Yeah, he definitely. I second that. Tom is a total G, and
Yeah,
he put together this demo website using Cosmic. So this is all powered by Cosmic, and you can see like some of the capabilities here that you can do with the Imagix service. So we're really happy. Our customers are happy that that this is a partnership that we have, and yeah. So we'll include this link in the show notes so you guys can check this out.
this is a
Also, I'll
good,
link back to
yeah,
that video, that build time episode that we did with him as well.
absolutely. This is a good touch on the collaboration aspect of Cosmic because, of course, Tom built this with Cosmic, but the whole point was for him and his colleagues to be able to go in and show some of these demos with Imagix, and it's as simple as putting someone on the project in Cosmic on the bucket, and they could just go in and make these. And I think he built this with Next.js, and it just adds and deploys with dynamic routes and everything. So that's, the collaboration aspect is beautifully demonstrated here.
Totally. So along with optimizations, we also have the collaboration aspect, which you just mentioned. I think that's a big one as well. Let's come back here. So I think, something that I like to do is kind of talk about who a headless CMS is for, but also who a headless CMS what who it's not for, right? So
Okay.
and I think that that use case that we have with like Imagix, they've got they had a problem where they had a bunch of like demos that they wanted to display, and they didn't have a place on their website for it. So they just decided, let's just put together this demo website, right? And what they're doing is they're having all of their team members come in and update the content, and it's great because they don't have to spend developer time and resources on adding the content. They're not pushing this content up with the code. They just have a simple login, and then it provides them the ability to just update all of that without having to push any new code, right? Not have to bug a developer and say, hey, can you update this copy for us, or whatever, or
Yeah.
update this image, or whatever it is. It's just, it makes it so that each persona, each team member, the developer, the content creator, gets exactly what they need to get their job done. Now, what I would say is the caveat to headless CMS and how it's optimized for a team. If you're not in a team, then it might not be the right solution, right? So I think that if you maybe are a content creator, that you don't have the budget for a developer to help you build that custom front end, maybe you want a CMS with a head, right? Maybe you want WordPress, maybe you want a Wix or Squarespace. If you don't have the resources to get a customized front end built for you, then I think that headless CMS might not be the right choice at this time. It would probably be a little bit more difficult to do it on your own. And so I think that for kind of the consumer use, it's probably better to choose maybe a drag and drop page builder like a WordPress, like a Squarespace, like a Wix. Now, the same goes for, I think, a developer. If you're a developer and you don't necessarily want a dashboard interface to manage content, you don't have team members to sort of hand over content creator access into a dashboard to manage content for a website or app, then maybe you just want to push your content into your code. Maybe you're comfortable with using Markdown and just to kind of push it up into a GitHub repository, right? So I think that's kind of where, in my opinion, headless CMS may not be the right fit if you don't have a team of specialized developers and content creators. Then maybe it could possibly be something that wouldn't work for you. Any thoughts on that?
From a developer standpoint, it's very empowering to use something like a headless CMS because you get a good understanding of how everything's working, and actually it's kind of easier. And honestly, I like the dashboard of Cosmic, and as opposed to going in and writing posts in something like WordPress. But on that topic too, there's definitely a place for WordPress. There's a crowd for WordPress, of course, and it's important to highlight that sometimes WordPress, sometimes it's the right solution, and it all just depends. It depends, how many people are getting into your project. Do you need more custom things, or do you need to bring an existing code base into your project? And yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think this is a really good section to review. We've asked a few of these questions to various customers, and I think that for the most part, like if you're answering yes to a lot of these questions as a developer, content creator, or business owner, I think that you'll understand if a headless CMS is right for you. And I think it really is sort of that solution that works best in a team environment. For your portfolio, Stefan, like you I can tell you like to use a dashboard to like create content and have the image optimization there for you in the hosted solution. And we've got a free plan that makes it easy for developers to onboard into Cosmic and use it for their portfolio. Some folks like to use the WYSIWYG editor. Some like to use Markdown. You've chosen to use Markdown, which I think is definitely more of like the developer approach when it comes to writing articles. So we do provide, not to say that we aren't encouraging developers to use Cosmic for like personal projects, but I think that if you do like to have that kind of content creation step versus like writing Markdown in your code or in like VS Code editor or whatever, then I think Cosmic is a great choice. And I'm glad that you're happy using it. I use it for my own projects as well, and I love to use it. Obviously, like Cosmic is built on Cosmic. All of these articles that we write are all powered by our CMS, and so we love to use it as well, even though like we're all developers as well, right?
Yeah.
And we're writing this content. So yeah, but I think that it kind of it's worth mentioning though that maybe maybe a CMS is not the right choice at all for some projects, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess to close this out, I'd love to just kind of show a preview of the new dashboard and maybe to drive it home as far as like what you get with a headless CMS. So what I've done is I've actually created this this project in our new dashboard. So if you go to, I'll go ahead and just show what this looks like. If you go to our landing page for the new dashboard, you'll see a waiting list email form that you can actually get on the list, and when you're invited to join the alpha, we'd love to kind of get your feedback on the experience. And this is kind of what you'll see when you get into the dashboard. So here's a little live preview for everyone. So you so just kind of like talk about what a headless CMS is and kind of what you get. Notice that I have projects. Notice that it's plural. I think that's an important distinction, right? For like headless CMS between Cosmic versus WordPress. With WordPress, you get a single project, right? You get one website. That's it.
Yeah.
With Cosmic, notice you get multiple projects. You can have any number of like websites or applications that are powered by the Cosmic Headless CMS. So I've put together this this project here. We've got something called buckets, which can be considered environments. So we've got production here, but you could also have staging or development, right? All right, so let's go into the production bucket. Now we have sort of a recently modified section here for quick links to maybe pieces of content that you're currently working on. Let's go to our content page. So you'll see over here we have something called content types, and this is where you kind of develop your content modeling. And so notice we've kind of created something like a maybe a road warrior website where let's say you're a biking enthusiast or a sports car enthusiast and you like to blog about your good rides. So I've kind of set this up. This is sort of a fantasy website. We haven't actually built out the front end for it, but it's just sort of building out the content modeling. Well, what would this look like if you were a motorcycle enthusiast and you wanted to blog about your rides? Okay, so now I have content types. I want to have blog posts. Maybe I want to categorize them into various categories of like, here's my bike rides, here's my car rides. Then I have like maybe the bikes that I've ridden. So I've got Harleys, Ducatis, Indians, Triumphs. Cars, I've got Corvettes, Mustangs, Shelbys, right? So when you're using a headless CMS, notice I didn't have to install any plugins to get like really kind of content modeling capabilities. And notice that like my content wasn't limited to just blog posts, right? So with a headless CMS, you can create really powerful content modeling, and it can kind of suit your specific use case, right?
I often find myself in WordPress looking for everything. And with this layout here in the new Cosmic dashboard, since, if you are the developer or even the content creator that's very savvy, creating the content model of the whole project, you've made everything. So you know exactly where everything is. Everything's in one place. Whereas you get into a WordPress project and, you might know where your categories are, but you have to do a few things to get there. You got to go to the categories and then go through everything and on different pages. Whereas this dashboard, especially this new dashboard, being that it's a single page application, you just click on those categories and it's all right in front of you.
Definitely. And I think that that's something I think this is really important to understand, is that everything is easily accessed in this new dashboard. Even in the old dashboard, we've taken the approach being somewhat agnostic to what these data types are, right? So if you do want to update categories, or if you've got like a content type for maybe authors, right? Like that's all kind of regarded as the same type of flexible type, right? You can really create all sorts of different types and then have them just sort of relate to each other, right? So nothing is sort of hidden behind the scenes of where you have to like make a few different clicks. It's all kind of right there, right? So I think that's a good point. Okay, so for like content modeling, notice I didn't have to install like advanced custom fields, which I remember with WordPress was like that's sort of mandatory. Like you have to, you have a few plugins that are sort of essential for 99% of the websites that you want to build. Just requires like you to install a few different plugins. With Cosmic, we've sort of decided like we need we need a flexible content model, right? And so we've got a concept called meta fields where you can like drag and drop in, your text, your numbers, different form fields such as switches for like, true and false, media meta fields like we mentioned. This comes with the Imagix service out of the box, as well as like kind of more logical types of fields like a repeater or a parent field, and then object relationships. So if you wanted to have like, categories on this blog post, we have maybe a single object relationship that relates to a certain category, right? So I'm just sort of dragging all these in here, but this has already kind of been built out with the right modeling that we want for that blog post. So we'll go ahead and go into a blog post and show you what that looks like. So if we go into one of these blog posts, you'll see that we have like our title, our slug, and then our content area. And so this is like your typical WYSIWYG editor, which is great for content creators, right? Maybe if you're a developer, you want to use Markdown, that's great. Maybe if you're a content creator, Markdown isn't the right choice. So that's why we include this WYSIWYG editor. We also have like, nice little emoji meta field there for you, a big juicy image area for you to choose your hero image. And then those relationship meta fields that we have for like selecting objects. So if you wanted to select between different bikes, you have that option here. And if you want to select a category, well, obviously this is a bike blog. We went on a bike ride, so we want to make sure that it's available through the API. If you want to search by category, we can do that by connecting it to the category content type. All right, and then we click publish. So that's about the extent that you get with the headless CMS, right? You have now your content management dashboard already built. You don't have to maintain or install any plugins to make it function how you want. It's already kind of optimized for you. Now, the next step for the developer is to put this content somewhere, right? We've got this developer tools drawer that enables you to take this code, and you can actually just copy and paste this, and it runs perfectly for you without having to do anything. You've got that. Oops. I'm going to try to show what this curl request looks like. So if I copy and paste this curl request, can you guys see what that looks like? I'm saying plural, but can you, Stefan?
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
So we have this endpoint, and it's going to request our blog posts, and it's going to spit out a bunch of content here, right? Nice. So that's kind of the beauty of this this system, is that it's kind of specialized with your dashboard and your API, and then you bring your own front end, and you can build your front end in React or Vue or Svelte or whatever framework you want to choose. But that's kind of where Cosmic ends and where your application begins, and that's the beauty of a headless CMS, is you have kind of everything optimized for you up until that point of where you need your data, and then you can kind of take it from there.
It's nicely put. It's where Cosmic ends and your application begins. It's very organized. It's when you design these content models and you add these meta fields in the dashboard, as a developer, you're looking at the dashboard, but basically you're looking at an API, you're looking at objects, and you're looking at, blog post title and object oriented kind of things, and querying that data. And you get so used to it after a while that you build it out in Cosmic, and you're already taking it over to your application, and you know what you're looking for. So, and those developer tools, yeah, those things next level, because those will help you get that info super easy.
Yeah, we've got great documentation, right? So you can go to the docs.cosmicjs.com. You can run through some of these quick starts. You can, browse examples as well as get into the nitty gritty of the kind of API reference and really kind of learn about all of the data modeling and all that good stuff. But I think that as developers, as a developer myself, with when it comes to like thumbing through documentation, I would love to just have the code copy and pastable, right? Like I'd rather not have to go thumbing through documentation. So that's the beauty of this developer tools drawer. Just kind of affords you the ability to avoid, having to go through documentation. Though we do have great docs, this is, in my opinion, like really kind of a nice feature to sort of get up and running faster.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, I think that pretty much concludes our intro to headless CMS. Hopefully that was a helpful kind of summary of what the differences are between traditional CMS and headless CMS, as well as maybe some of the backstory behind, both you and I and our experience using a traditional CMS and sort of the benefits that we're seeing with headless. But I think it's kind of an emergent technology, a new type of solution, and it's exciting to be a part of this trend and kind of push it forward. Do you have any final thoughts on this, Stefan?
I like that. I thought there's a lot of, while there's a lot of kind of formal information there, it was, we've got a lot of our own experience, and it's real world experience as far as what these solutions might be good for. And I hope that anyone listening can kind of take from that at a higher level perspective. And of course, if you guys have any questions about any of that, feel free to reach out to Tony or myself over on Twitter or over on our Cosmic Slack channel. We'll have a link to that in the description. So
for sure. All right, I think that closes it out. So thanks everyone. We will see you next time. Bye.
See you guys.